Hi everyone, Antoine Fandango here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Childish Gambino album, Because the Internet. Childish Gambino is the stage name, the pseudonym of actor, writer, singer, songwriter, producer, Donald Glover, who you may know outside of the music world for his role in shows such as 30 Rock, or Community. From his stand-up too and a bunch of other things, he's been dropping musical projects for years, but he sort of reached this peak of attention with his 2011 album Camp, which was one of my least favorite albums of that year. I don't really want to talk about why. And even though there are a lot of people that hate that review and hate me for that review, I was not anticipating the same level of dislike from this new record of Gambino's because there were some banger beats and tracks on his royalty mixtape that I thought were pretty good. He had a feature on Chance the Rapper's latest mixtape that I thought was decent, and there were some songs that dropped before the release of Because the Internet that I thought were enjoyable. I thought that I would be in for a bit of a mood change on this new project of Gambino's, and for sure, Because the Internet is a very different project from Camp. However, this record is not without its baggage or its hangups, though. For one, this LP does kind of come along with a 72-page screenplay, which sort of seems to be the narrative which this album soundtracks. So, while I don't think the screenplay can be completely ignored because the screenplay and the album run at such a close parallel, I still ended up being really underwhelmed by what was going on in this tale, which wasn't really much of anything. We essentially follow the exploits of a silver spoon protagonist struck with this general feeling of malaise and depression, which there's never really any explanation or justification for throughout the whole story. We're just supposed to accept that he's sad. And there's never a point in this storyline where the reader is actually influenced to care about why the protagonist is so sad or depressed. It's not like his negative worldview and loneliness brings a special perspective to the table that lends some insight to the reader, and it's not like his sadness or his depression is uniquely interesting either. As far as I could see, all of the issues he's dealing with are some of the same issues we all deal with. The only thing happening here is that he's handling them in a really ungraceful manner. So because the characters and the dialogue and the emotions are so shallow and boring and pointless, we're sort of dragged through a series of disorienting plot shifts that follow very little logic and leave more questions than answers. For one, the boy and his group of friends witness a robbery at a burger place, and the protagonist also witnesses a shooting outside of a nightclub, which his friend mysteriously leaves him outside of to just hang out by himself. Seeing some of this violence just makes him go to Oakland to see this girl that I think he used to be with. Then there's a point when his dad just dies, who is actually supposed to be played by Rick Ross, so says the screenplay, which is really the only legitimately depressing thing about this character's life from what I can tell. But after his father dies, he has to head to Sweden to claim the ashes, where he actually has a fight with the guy who wrote What Does the Fox Say? And then toward the end of this thing, spoiler alert, he just up and decides to become a drug dealer and then is like shot in one of the next scenes. The whole screenplay really reminded me of other independently filmed movies that I had seen recently, like Tim Heidecker's The Comedy, or that new Michael Cera film, Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus. Movies that also center around these kind of young, careless, but emotionally distressed main characters, and we follow them on an emotional journey of a very short distance. And while these movies for sure are character portraits, and I think they work best as character portraits, they're very boring and kind of inconsequential as stories. And that is especially the case for Because the Internet, even though a lot of people do seem to be kind of interpreting this thing as a social commentary on social awkwardness in the internet age. But for me, that is a far stretch. Either that or the social commentary here is not really carried out that well. There are instances in this script and on this album where things like trolling and WORLDSTAR hip-hop are brought to attention, people using the internet to treat other people like garbage or gawk at the dark underbelly of mankind. But still, even sort of important issues like this feel like mere subplots or footnotes in this screenplay's unjustified despair and lack of drive. Not as a script, but as an album, Because the Internet is way more interesting. For one, it features way better production than what was on Camp. There are tons of trap-influenced beats, a lot like what landed on Royalty, but A lot more melodic, more interesting textures too. Like on the song Crawl with the female vocal samples and the killer kick drums, the very lavish keyboards and the string sections on this thing, and the multiple beat change-ups on this track. It's a really surprising and beautiful instrumental. Beats like this right now I feel like are the perfect sound for Gambino's music because they're aggressive, they're heavy, there's a lot of bass, but the synth leads and some of the samples make things playful or kind of silly enough for him to put forward these ridiculous punchlines he usually works with. I'm glad that Gambino is starting to sidestep a lot of the pop rap sounds that were kind of played out on Camp, but I don't think he's in totally original territory yet. There's so many things that occur on this LP that I think are mere variants of things that have been hot over the past year, past 2 or 3 years. For one, most of the slow jams on this album kind of sound like a Frank Ocean B-side from Channel Orange. And in my opinion, the singing on this LP is not as good or as distinct as Frank's. And neither are the lyrics either, with some refrains on here like, "Hold me close, my darling," or "Tuesday afternoon, ain't got shit to do but fall in love with you," which happens on the song Shadow, where Gambino is doing these really subdued raps against his singing. And to me, the song is just really overly sentimental. It's underwhelming, a lot like the track Telegraph Avenue with the Oakland, Oakland chorus. I do like the fast rap verse Gambino spits toward the end of this track, but it's not so good that it makes me want to stick around for all of this inconspicuous R&B style singing. Still, I don't really dislike this track or many other tracks on here instrumentally. I may not dig the song or the singing or the lyrics, but the beat. The beats are really where Because the Internet shines through. I like on Shadows the bass arpeggios, which I believe are being brought by Thundercat, the very cool, calming vocal harmonies, and the really distorted guitar riff that is just booming and buzzing toward the back end of the track. It's really psychedelic. It's a great progression. 3005, the lead single from this LP, it's not a song that I love, but to me it's probably the best on here when it comes to this mixture of Donald's pop sensibilities and his hip-hop sensibilities. They complement each other in this really cute little love song where the melody is undeniable. Yeah, the chorus is a little rotten my teeth because of how sweet it is, but I'm still digging this song a lot more than the slower, more syrupy ballads on this thing, which I think are just literally so boring that I want to skip over all of them. So the instrumentals I do praise through and through, but it's the lyrics and the songs on here that can be really, really hit or miss for me. Like the song Earth, The Oldest Computer, with its really ambitious driving beat and its numerous synth layers. But what Donald does here vocally with his singing and with his flow on here too, I feel like we only end up hearing a less grandiose version of Kanye's Lost in the World from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And then there's the song Zealots of Stockholm with its numerous instrumental shifts. It's really, really linear. It's really all over the place, but only a very small amount of what actually happens on this track ends up being captivating or even memorable. The few tracks on here that I thought were legitimately entertaining were the more aggressive ones like Crawl and WORLDSTAR Hip Hop, where some of Gambino's punchlines I at least thought, despite them being very silly, are kind of funny, like "Y'all B-string like a broke guitar and I still put it down like the family dog," or that one stop in the song WORLDSTAR where gun go brrr, phone go brrr, hello. Consistently over the course of this album and this script, Gambino is trying to give us this character who is this young, well-to-do recluse who spends a lot of time on the internet, and I guess that's what he is, and I guess that's what he knows. But I wouldn't say he's great at keeping that angle and keeping that persona interesting long-term, though. One of the best moments where he's in this character is on the song Sweatpants. Despite the fact that Glover is 30 at this point in his life, he is saying that he's a rich kid asshole, paint me as a villain. And there's some hilarious lines in this track, too. Are you eating, though? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner's for beginners, you don't even know. And I do think Donald does display the darkness of that reclusive side on the song No Exit successfully. The closer on here is really self-defeating, but also kind of triumphant too, which I thought was great, kind of having this character struggle. But the thing is, this record is so dependent on this screenplay to be completely understood, or I even think enjoyed, just on its own. They complement each other in a way. The music sort of spackles some of the cracks, left in the screenplay with how illogical some of these shifts are in the storyline. But I guess the script brings this deeper character portrayal that the album doesn't necessarily have. And the thing is, this album kind of brings a different character personality trait to this boy individual that Gambino is talking about in the screenplay, because while this guy is very just quiet and sad and not really doing much of anything throughout the whole story, there are songs on here on this album where this character is very cocky and in your face and ridiculous. I think there's a lot of potential in the amount of ambition that Gambino came forward with on this script and on this record, and how they come together, but there are just so many completely uninteresting spots, especially throughout the script. I like a lot of songs on here that I think are legitimately good, but I still don't like this LP as a whole. I think Gambino brought great instrumentals to this record. He's very conceptual, he's a capable rapper, but the lyrics on this record, the flow of this record, the songs on this record, and the singing on this record tend to be very weak. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition, Internet. If you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Childish Gambino, Because the Internet, forever.